So what I'm gonna rustle up now is a very healthy beef dish with black beans. Coconut oil, tablespoonful. That's probably more than you need, but you know, this is a healthy oil which won't get saturated upon high heat. Let that stir around in a hot pan. The key is to make it hot. Spice-wise, it's dry chili peppers, black pepper. I won't put the salt in because I've got my soy sauce. I like to use gluten-free, and oyster sauce is so versatile. So as this is pretty much done, I like to actually get my chili peppers, maybe a quarter teaspoon, but I like a whole teaspoon. Let that burn a little bit. Different flavor comes out upon burning as opposed to just cooking it. And that's all it takes, just a few minutes. Some people like garlic. You can add garlic if you want to. I'm gonna add the onions in here. Hear that sizzle. And ordinarily you might want to saute the onions, but in this situation, I'm just gonna go ahead and add my beef. Spread that out. Beautiful. Usually I'm in a rush, but sometimes going a little slow lets it fry, saute a little bit more effectively. Now what I've prepared is dehydrated shiitake mushrooms, but I've hydrated it. When they're sliced, they don't take long to rehydrate, maybe half an hour. So I drain those. I get my own black beans and I rehydrate them overnight, ideally, then boil them. And it's important to eliminate or remove the water that they're boiled in. That's where they say there may be lectins and extra starch that you don't need. But as this is cooking, I'm going to tell you that the lean protein, the onions, the black beans, the mushrooms, the spring onions, I'm going to tell you how not only tasty they are, how health promoting they are. So as that beef is sauteing, it's sweating, it's caramelizing, you can see the color changing. I sliced them up into fairly thin slices, so it shouldn't really take long to cook, maybe at top 15 minutes in total. So I'm ready to kind of add my garlic. I like a whole teaspoon. You can use half a teaspoon of crushed garlic. And I didn't put it at the beginning because it would burn. I just want to get that garlicky flavor in here. You know, my family like it a little hot, so I put those crushed chilies. I'm going to put a little bit more, so I'm going to use 2 teaspoons of crushed garlic. But again, just put as much or as little as you want. And the garlic, we want to saute, but we do not want to burn it. So literally, as I put it in, within 30 seconds, I'm ready to add my other ingredients. And before I add my ingredients, I want to actually add my sauce. So soy sauce has some of the salt in it. So ordinarily, you know, if I was to get a dessert spoon, you might want to put a couple of those in. 1 and 2. I'm going to be conservative because, you know, the point is you can always add more. But once you put it in, you can't take it away. Let's stir that in. And the same thing with the oyster sauce here. 2 parts soy sauce, 1 part oyster sauce. This is kind of nice and thick, so I do like oyster sauce. You can put it in vegetables, you can put it in fish, you can put it in chicken and beef. So I think I'm going to need at least 1.5 dessert spoons of that. And the main thing is that you want to just taste it for your own palate. This is salty enough. I can already smell it. You know, what I'm doing is looking, I'm smelling. It's a combination of the two. And then of course, finally you can put your finger in there and dip it in there. Now I'm going to put my mushrooms in because they actually take a little bit of time to cook, believe it or not. So even though they're rehydrated, I'm going to let that sweat in there, let all the flavors mix in there. Sometimes you might even want to add a little bit of hot water because you want a little bit more of the liquid, because mushroom is like a sponge. That's kind of its capability, right? It's a detoxifier because it has that spongeability. Things that suck up, like certain types of weeds and grasses, leek and celery, the things that suck up, they are actually detoxifier because that's kind of how they bring things in through the system and then they can detoxify, filter that out. So I do think I'm going to need a little bit of water in here. So add a little bit of water from the kettle. I'll just put that back in. Just a little bit, because again, you can always add a little bit more. But again, because it's mushroom, the mushroom can sort of absorb quite a bit of fluid, so I want to put that in there. That'd be a good time to kind of taste. Just the right amount of salt and sweet, not too much. And based on the timing and looking at the color, I think it's almost cooked, but mushrooms do take a little bit of time. So I would just, if you wanted at this stage, you could literally put a lid on it and wait 5 minutes. One of my final garnishes for the beef is actually black pepper. I like a lot of black pepper when it comes to my beef. So literally, that's a whole teaspoon. And again, that should be enough for most people, but I'm a 2-teaspoon person. I like to feel that black pepper. I want to taste that soy sauce. I want that black beans to all blend in there. So from here, I'm going to transfer, just use my bigger spoon. You know, a big tablespoon. I mean, it's more than a tablespoon, isn't it? So, you know, I would just say a whole cup, frankly. So if I guesstimate, that's going to be a whole cup. And why not a little bit extra, because you're going to hear some of the benefits. In fact, you know, why not just put the whole thing in? There is such a thing as maybe putting too much black beans, but I've got at least equal amounts of beef as black beans. So I'm going to mix that in here. Turn up the heat a little bit more. Now I'm ready to kind of dry it out. You know, I had the liquid in there for all the flavors to get together. And now we're ready for the final touch. So I'm going to leave the lid open so that juice can concentrate for me. And the final touch will be just the spring onions on top. But again, you don't want to cook that. You just sprinkle it on top for flavor and a final stir. Okay, the final touch here, I can see that the juices here are getting a little bit thicker. You know, I do not like to use corn flour. You know, if I'm going to really entertain and want things to, for guests, should we say, I would use corn flour, or better still, maybe rice flour or tapioca flour to thicken it up. But here, look, this is for health. So I'm not going to be as interested in that consistency as I may do if I'm entertaining guests. So the black beans are done, the mushrooms are done. It's all blended together, just the right amount of gravy in there. I'm going to sprinkle my spring onions on top. Now you leave it for garnish because you really don't want to cook it. Turn off the heat, and now you're ready to plate that. And then if the spring onions sort of blend in, that's perfect.